Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Anthony. I am really excited about this video today because today we are going to set up a web server to serve a Django application. Now, the difference in this one is most of the Python, Django, or any sort of Python-related web app tutorials you're going to find, it's just going to show you how to build it and serve it on localhost. There really isn't too much out there that shows you how to push it to production so that it's served to a public IP. So that's really going to be the focus of this video. We are going to use a publicly available tutorial currently. It's the Django Rest API tutorial as our code base. But really the focus of the video is not going to be the code and how it works, although we'll go over that some. It's really going to be hosting it yourself and learning how to push it to production. So we're going to start with a bare naked server. I'm using DigitalOcean. I did a one-click install of CentOS 7, and there's nothing currently on it. So I think that's important because if you are going to go through a tutorial, most of the time they're assuming you have certain things set up. They're assuming you have certain versions of things. There are a lot of assumptions made, so they're really just starting in the middle. And this is going to allow us to start from the beginning and go through the entire process from beginning to end, and you'll get to see some of the stuff that I ran into as I was going through it myself. So just to kind of go in order of how we're going to organize this, because this is going to be a little bit of a longer video. First, we're going to set up our server, and that's really just what we did when I installed the DigitalOcean droplet. So it's pretty much a one-click. That's the easy part. But beyond that, we're going to start with the firewall. So since we're serving a web app to the public, we want that firewall to be locked down. We're also going to talk about how you can lock it down just to your own internal IP so that you can use it as sort of a staging site if you'd like as well. I'm going to make this one public at first, and then we may change it up a little bit and just lock it down depending upon how things go. But I'll explain both here in a little bit. We're also going to install Apache. So Apache is what we're going to use as the engine behind serving our application. We're going to mess with some configuration files in there that are going to allow it to, or enable it to understand Python, basically. There are some modules that can go in and make it go understand Python versus, your typical, PHP type languages. And we're also going to set up a VHost. So a vhost is basically what your shared hosting looks like. So shared hosting is going to allow you to host multiple websites on one account, and we're going to set it up that will enable you to do that as well. SELinux is a way that you can protect your server basically from processes attacking your files and folders. So since processes like Apache, for example, has to have access to do certain things, there are other processes that shouldn't. So SELinux is going to allow us to lock that down a little bit. We're also going to go into some miscellaneous items that you'll just need because you need to be able to compile C. You need to be able to do some other things and have development tools that are going to enable everything else to work. We're also going to take a look at the code. So the code itself is, again, it's the REST API code that you'll find for Django, and we'll go through that. And it's basically just going to allow us to spit out some JSON at the end of the day. That's where we'll end it. It's a multi-part series online, and I've gone through the whole thing. But in order to make this work today, we only really need the first part. The next step is we will test it on localhost. And once we test this on localhost and see that it works, we'll be able to take the next step, which is to push this to production. So I'm really excited again about getting started, so I say we just jump right into it. Now the first command that I ran was actually yum update. So I have my clean CentOS server here that I ran a yum update on, and I'm not going to go over that other than to say that this is the command, yum update. So you'll want to run that whenever you install a clean install of CentOS 7, and it takes a little while, so I did it as soon as I hit start on this video. So it looks like it's done now. From there, we're going to basically get our firewall set up. So remember, we want to serve this to the world, and if we're going to do that, we need to open up some ports. So first, let's install our firewall. So the way to do that is going to be a simple one-liner here. We're going to say yum install firewall d. Well, I can't spell today, can I? Firewall d. And we'll say tac y, which means just yes. It means automatically accept it. Don't ask for verification. Just press. So we've done that now. So if you want to do a system CTL status firewall D, you're going to see that it shows inactive. That means your firewall is not active. It's not a running process right now. So the way to start that firewall is to just say start instead of status. So let's do that now. System CTL start firewall D. All right, so if I run a status on this again, you can see now it says it's active and running. So that's an easy way that you can go and check your firewall. And so the next thing we're going to do, that's actually it for the firewall right now. We'll get to setting some rules once we start getting to the Apache piece. So let's go to the HTTPD or Apache install. So for Apache, you're going to do yum. So let's do yum update HTTPD, which it shouldn't do anything because I've already updated the server. But we'll do yum update HTTPD. You can see it says no packages marked for update, and it says that it's available but not installed. So to install it, I'll do a yum install HTTPD, and we'll do a tac y again, so that it will automatically go through the process without asking me for verification. All right. So now that that's done, you can see how quick it is. Now we can think about the firewall for a second. We have an active firewall, but there are no rules set. So in order to set the rules, we want to go through what's going to be needed. So what is one thing we'll need? One, we'll need probably port 80 and port 443 opened. So in order to do that, we're going to say firewall CMD, and we'll say permanent. Now permanent is going to allow this setting to persist between reboots basically. If you don't say permanent, it's only going to last for the session. So we'll say add service equals HTTP. I have an error. Let's do tac add service. All right, now it says success. Now we'll do the same thing with HTTPS. Success. All right, so now, something else we're actually going to do, the way we're going to make our vhosts work is I'm not going to use a domain name. Typically for subdomains and add-on domains, you're going to have a vhost for each one, and you'll identify that vhost by that particular subdomain or add-on domain. Since I'm just going to use IP addresses, you really can't subdomain an IP address the same way. So I'm going to use ports. So instead of just using HTTP and HTTPS, we're going to use a port, so I'll need to open a port in the firewall that is going to serve our application is going to listen through. So we'll do firewall CMD permanent, and now we're going to say add port, and we're going to say, let's use 8080, and we'll do TCP traffic, all right? So that's also a success. So after that's done, what we want to do is reload this firewall so that we can actually see the rules that we put into place. So let's do that. Let's do a firewall cmd tac reload. And then firewall cmd. And now let's do a list all. Oops. CMD list all. All right, so take a look at what we've got here. Our firewall, which is currently active, has got HTTP, which we added, HTTPS, it's got SSH, and then it's got the 8080 port open right now. So these are the rules that I just set, which once I get everything up and running, I should be able to just go to the IP address and view it, and that should pretty much be it. In fact, let's just give it a try now and just see. Actually, we have to start our server, right? We haven't done that. Let's do systemctl status HTTPD. And now you can see, same thing here. It's showing that it's dead. And so we'll do systemctl start HTTPD. All right, as you can see, it's displaying the default Apache landing page. That is the page that it will show if you have no files, no index, no nothing inside of your directory. So let's go ahead and take the next step. All right, so what we want to do, since HTTPD, since Apache is installed now, is we want to make a couple changes to the configuration file. So what we're going to do is go to the etc HTTPD directory, and if you take a look here, you've got a few directories that we'll end up using. This first one is going to be conf. So we're going to go to conf, and there's a file in here called httpd.conf. And so just open that in your favorite editor of choice, and let's just go through some of the items in here. So we can see the server root is where we're at. It's listening on port 80. So we've already said that we're going to listen on port 8080. So let's do that now. We'll say listen 8080. So now it's listening on both ports. Keep going down and you'll see that it's going to include conf.modules.d, every file in there that ends with conf. So keep that in mind because that's going to be important later. We don't need to mess with this line, but this is how everything else works, especially when we start to serve this to the public. So here you can see the user and group is actually Apache. So Apache is the username that it's going to run as. You can change this. Sometimes it'll be nobody, like literally nobody. Sometimes it'll be www data. It really just depends. But for this installation, it's Apache by default, and we'll just leave it like that. Beyond that, we've got server admin information. You can put in the server admin email. You can do server name. So you can see here, I actually just updated this during the break, and I put my server name as my IP address. The default is usually going to be www.example.com, but we're going to change that to just the IP address. And then our document root here is var www.html. So we're going to go in here, toss out a sample file really quick, and just test this out and see if it works. So that should be pretty much all we care about right now. Just kind of scroll through the rest of this. Okay, our logs / error log. Error log is where all of your server error logs are going to go. So anytime something happens, if it crashes, it's going to go there. Since we're going to set up a vhost, we're actually going to set that in a different directory depending upon the vhost. And that's pretty much it. So we'll go ahead and we'll escape out of this, and we will move on to the next step. Actually, let's do a quick serve of a file in var www HTML. You can see there's nothing there. So let's make a file really quick, and we'll call it index.html. And let's do a quick just blurb, HTML and HTML. And we'll say hello world from, we'll say port 80. So that way you'll know which file this is. So let's give this a try really quick. All right, there you go. So hello world from port 80. So right now, this is live to everybody in the world, the good guys and the bad guys, the hackers, everybody. And they will, if they go to this IP right now, they will see hello world from port 80. That's really where the whole staging discussion comes in, where we want to lock it down to our IP. But for right now, I'm not too concerned with that. All right, so let's move on to the next step here. So we've got HTTPD installed, right? We've done the firewall. And so what's next? Well, the vhost. So we want to get our vhost set up so that we can serve a different file in a different location. And so in order to do that, we're going to have to create a user to start. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a user, and we'll say, let's name him, we'll do user add, and let's call him, I guess we can just call him user, right? No, let's not do that because that could be confusing. Let's do Brunstar. That will be our user. Our user will be Brunstar. So we'll do there's a new user named Brunstar. So now let's do passwd Brunstar, and we're going to give him a password. So I'm just going to make one up really quick here. And it shows that his token's updated successfully. So now if you do a cd into home, you will see that there is now a user here named Brunstar. So again, vhosts allow for shared hosting, and if you have a shared hosting account, what you will typically see is everything under your directory tree. So that's what we have set up here. So let's cd into Brunstar, and there's nothing in there, of course. And so now let's think about how we want to organize this. Typically, underneath the main directory, there's going to be a directory called public HTML. So let's create that now. So we'll do mkdir public HTML. And now here's where it varies. You'll find from account to account or hosting provider to hosting provider that they're going to allow you to serve your files kind of how you want. Sometimes they'll say to stick all your subdomains underneath the public HTML. Sometimes they'll say it doesn't really matter as long as the permissions are set up. It really just depends. But how we're going to do it now is we're going to have two directories. We're going to have our logs directory, so we'll do make_dir logs, and we'll have our public HTML directory. All of our files that we're serving to the public, we're going to push to public HTML. All of the files that create logs, we're going to put into logs. So we're not going to make that publicly available. We're not going to put it out to potentially be found in our public HTML directory. So now that that's done, we have to think, okay, if we're going to create a subdomain, where do we want to put it? So we're actually going to put this subdomain inside of public HTML this time. And we're going to give it a name. So typically the name of it is going to be the same name as whatever you put in the browser. So if it is docs.google.com, then it would be docs.google.com. In our case, we don't have a domain name, so we're just going to call it something random. So we'll say make_dir, and let's do sub API because that's the tutorial we're going to go through. It's an API tutorial. So we'll call it we'll say make_dir sub API. Now, if you notice, I'm doing all of this as a root because I'm feeling like I'm living on the edge today. So I'm operating as root. Ideally, you would do an SU to substitute user, so you can become the user that you're operating as. But I'm going to leave it as root for right now so that we can actually get into some different commands that we wouldn't necessarily need if we switched, such as change owner and things like that. So now we've got a pretty good structure. We've got let's just go up a couple levels. So we've got our user, Brunstar. We've got logs and public HTML. And then inside of public HTML, we've got sub API. So we'll create one more directory under logs, and it'll be the same. We'll say make_dir sub API. So I'm going to drop all of my logs under there. So each subdomain would have its own folder inside of the logs. So that's kind of how that is set up. All right, next, let's change. Actually, let's not yet. Let's just move on to our configuration files. So if I go back to cd etc httpd, you'll see that there is no really easy way right now to identify our virtual host, but we have to do that here. So a common way people do it is they will create a directory called sites available, and then they'll create another one called sites enabled. Now the available directory is going to have all of the actual configuration files themselves. One per vhost, sometimes two per vhost if they want to split it between SSL and non-SSL. The enabled directory is literally a symbolic link. It's a bunch of symbolic links to the available directory. So the moment you delete the enabled file, the site just disappears. And it's not deleting any files, it's not deleting any content, it's literally just deleting the pointer to that so that you can shut someone off or shut something off instantaneously without hurting anything else. And then to bring it back up, you just recreate the link. So now that that's done, we've created those two, we're going to have to find a way to call these. So let's go back into our httpd.conf file. There we go. Okay, I don't know what happened there. So now, if I go back into my conf directory, I can go vi httpd.conf, and at the very end of this, I'm going to include that sites available directory. And so you can see I'm including all of my configuration configuration files here, but after that I'm going to say include optional, and here's where we'll say sites enabled star.conf. All right. So again, it's only going to look in the enabled directory. It's not going to look in the available directory because that would turn everything on all the time. So let's save that. And we're going to go and build a configuration file really quick. So we're going to cd into the sites available directory. And then we'll create a file here. We're going to call this one subapi.conf. And just to make sure, let's go back to our home Brunstar public HTML folder and make sure it's matching. So we're going to call the configuration file the same as the directory in this directory here. And so there are a few directives that we want to set up here. The first is the fact that we decided we're going to use port 8080. So we're going to create a virtual host. So we'll say virtual host, and we'll say anything that gets served over port 8080 will fall into this particular host. And then we're going to end the virtual host there. And then inside of this is where I'm going to specify the different rules and directives for it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a server name. So I'll say server name. And for our server name, typically it'll be the same as the subdomain. But in our case, since we don't have a domain, we're just going to use the IP address. So again, if you do a hostname tac I, it's a big I, take that here, put that in there, and then we're going to say port 8080. And then here we'll say the server alias is the same. Not really needed now, but typically this is used for like if you have an optional www at the front of your domain. All right, so from there we're going to have the error log. So you need to specify where your error logs are going to go. And in our case, we want them to go into the logs directory that we created earlier. So let's find that. Let's go to see where we're at. So home Brunstar, and then looks like our logs directory is I guess it was already there. Okay, I was in the wrong directory. So let's clear this out and do pwd ls. All right, so you can see that our logs directory is home Brunstar logs. So let's cd into logs really quick. And that is where our logs are going to go. So we're going to do error log, and it's going to go into there, and then we'll give our error log a name. So we'll give it a name as error.log. So now anytime there's a server error that corresponds with this virtual host, it's going to go into that file. So next we'll say custom log, and we're going to put it in the same place, but we're going to give it a different name. So let's call this one, actually, hang on one second. We might need to change something here. Yeah, so we created our sub API directory. So that's really where we should be putting these. So home brunstar logs sub API. So let's just add that into here. And then we'll do the same thing here. And we'll say requests.log combined. Okay, so the next thing is really where the magic happens. This is where we set our document root. So we're going to say document root, which is where all of our files are served. And if you recall, we said that was in public HTML. So let's go up a couple directories, and you can see we've got public HTML, and then we've got sub API. And this is where our files are going to be served from. So we'll take that, we'll put it under the document root, and that's where they're going to go. So that's pretty much the basic information you're going to need in this file for now. As your site becomes more complex, needs more rules and things like that, then you're going to add more. We're actually going to modify this later when we start to publish our Python information. But for right now, we should be able to test this out pretty easily. But before we do, I want to run something by you really quick. So we talked a little bit about SELinux. So if you go and type git enforce, you'll see that it says enforcing. Now this means that unless a process has the permission to access or do something in a directory or with a file, it's not going to work. It needs to have permission to do that. So right now, for the purposes of this, we're going to set enforce to permissive, which means just log everything, but don't stop me from doing what I want to do. We're still going to set the rules, but in a little bit. But for right now, let's just do a set enforce 0, and now I'll do git enforce again, and you'll see that it switched from enforcing to permissive. So I'd like to try and see if this new subdomain works, but first we need to make a quick file and stick it into our sub API directory. So let's do that really quick. We'll do vi index.html, and then here we're going to just put in some information that identifies that we are actually in this particular subdomain. So we'll say hello from, we'll say sub API. Okay. All right, now there's one more thing that we're going to have to do, but I want you to see why. So we're going to try to make this work, and then we'll go from there. But let's do a systemctl just to get the status of our server. And you can see that it's inactive right now. So let's go ahead and start it. Systemctl start HTTPD. Okay, so now it's started, so I can run a status on it again and see that it's started. And let me come over here for a minute. And remember, we're listening on port 8080 for this one, not 80. So let's do 8080. And you can see it still isn't pulling anything, so clearly something's wrong, right? Well, if you recall what I said earlier, if you go into the sites enabled directory, there's nothing there. So remember, we have to actually enable this site for it to work. And even after I do that, there's still one more thing we have to do. So let's start by getting this site and enabling it so that the configuration files will find it. And we're going to do that by creating a link to that particular file. So what we'll do is we'll say ln, and we'll do a tech sfn etsy httpd sites available, and then this is where the configuration file goes. So what is the configuration file? Let's check. So we'll do ls etsy httpd sites available subapi.conf, right? So let's do subapi.conf. And what do we want to call the link? Well, we're going to call it the same thing that it's called in the other directory, so we'll say subapi.conf. Now let me ls that, and you can see, oh, it should be conf, not com. Let's fix that. So if I do a ls tech al, and you can see now that this is just it's pointing to the sites available. So now that it's there, I should be able to restart my server. Anytime you make changes to your configuration files, you want to restart your server. So we'll do systemctl restart httpd. Now bear in mind, we still have one more thing to do, but I want you to see how you get through some of these issues as you're getting these things set up. So now let me restart. Now you can see it says forbidden, I do not have permission to access. Why is that? So Apache is running as Apache and currently is going to go into this directory here and look for that file. But in order to do that, it has to have permissions to do that. So a common error will be something like a permissions issue throughout that directory tree. So let's just kind of walk up it and see what they look like, what the permissions look like. And as we're doing this, we'll also fix some of the other permissions that we have going on, which is why I'm running as root right now, because I wanted to be able to walk you through this. So if I do ls tech al, you can see here that root owns all of this. So we're going to change that, but also you see this dot here. Dot means the present directory, and you can see all others can read and execute this. Let's go up a directory. Do the same thing. Same thing, root owns this one, but Brunstar owns this one. So clearly we have some permission issues, some inconsistencies. The dot here, all others can read and execute. Let's go up another one. All right, now take a look at this one. This one's a little different. You can see root owns this still, but look at the dot here. You can see that nobody else can read or execute that, and that's the default. For the purposes of this, we're going to add a read execute permission for everybody else on here. Because I'm the only one using it, I have all of the subdomains under my control. So this really isn't an issue. Now, you will want to look at making the Apache service switch users in the future if you would like it to be able to access this while still restricting other people who may be on your server from accessing the different directories. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to do a chmod, and we're going to add a plus x, which is going to add the execute, and actually let's do plus rx to dot. And then we'll do an ls tech al again. Now you can see I added that here. We've still got root as the owner of everything, which I don't really like, so we're going to change that too. So let's do a change own recursively. We're going to change it to Brunstar as the user, Brunstar as the group, and then we'll do public HTML. All right, now let's do ls tech al there again. So now you can see Brunstar owns this. Brunstar didn't own it before, it was root, and then everything beneath this also is owned by Brunstar because of the recursive nature of this. So let me try this again and see what happens. There you go. So you could see it was obviously a permission issue, and I wanted to walk you through that so that you could see how to get through some of these issues. But you can see it says hello from sub API 1. That's from port 8080. Now if I take this off, it'll just default to the main one, which is hello from port 80. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to create another subdomain, and under that other subdomain is where we're going to put our Python code. So we're going to leave this 8080 alone here, and we're going to use 8081, which right now doesn't exist. So if I do 8081, enter, it's thinking about it, it's not going to work, nothing's going to happen. So let's go into our configuration file for starters. Let's do cd conf, and then we'll do a vi httpd.conf. Now you can see that we're listening on port 8080, and now we're going to add listen 8081. All right. So this is going to allow us to serve, basically just copy everything that we already had and paste it to another one, and then start listening over port 8081. That's how you create different, basically shared hosting. But before we go any farther with that, I want to make sure that we get everything else set up in order to make this work. So just as a quick recap, we've taken care of our firewall. We are going to have to make some more changes to that, of course, to add port 8081. We set up HTTPD. We did the VHost setup. We haven't messed with SELinux yet. So let's do the SELinux portion now, and after that, we'll be able to proceed with everything else. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to kind of just run through this pretty quickly, is we're going to say sudo set bool tacp httpd unified. The bottom line goal here is to allow the HTTPD process to access specific directories so that once we set that back to enforcing, then we won't have any issues. So let's just take a look at, let's do sudo ls tacd, and let's do var, no, we'll do home brunstar and what do we have as options here? Public HTML and logs. So let's do logs sub API. So let's list that. So you can see currently it says unconfined u object r user home t. Now we're going to make a change to this, and you'll see how this is going to change things here. So let's do se manage f context tac a tac t httpd t, and then we'll do the same directory. So we'll do home brunstar logs sub API, and then here we're going to say pick all of the log files in this directory. Hopefully my syntax worked out there. Okay, that's done. Now I'll do a restore con tac r tac v home brunstar logs sub API. All right, so you can see httpd.log or _log is here. So that's good. So let's do an ls again like we just did a minute ago. So now you see the difference here. It is unconfined object to httpd _log _t. So now let's just make sure our log files are there. So let's do ls home brunstar logs sub API, and then there's our two log files. Now those were created the moment that we enabled or started the service again, the HTTPD service, but basically this is setting up SELinux so that if I go back to enforcing mode, we won't have the issues that we would have accessing it. All right, what's next? So if I want to add a port to the SELinux, the way to do that is just one command. So what I need to do, since I'm using port 8080 and will soon be 8081, is I need to do se manage port. So there's actually two commands we're going to run. The first one will probably say it's already good to go, but _t tac p tcp, and then we pick our port. I'm not going to fully break this one down here. See, it says it's already defined. So now we'll say tac m and then we'll do 8081. We'll do the same thing. We haven't added 8081 to our firewall yet, so we will need to do that. All right. So now that that is done, let's go back to our firewall and we're going to open up one more port, 8081. So how do we do that? We do firewall, tac cmd, tac permanent, and then we're going to add port equals 8081 TCP. This should do it. Okay, and then let's reload that. And then we'll list our rules. All right, so now I've got 8081 here. Looks like we're just about good and ready for the next portion of this. So let's go up one directory. Let's go into sites available. And we're going to copy this sub API file and let's make another one. But this one, let's call sub API, we'll say py for Python. And then let's go over to the, what do we want to do? Let's go back to this one here. We're kind of jumping all over the place. And the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to create the directory structure for this one. So right now I'm in the home brunt starter, so I'm going to cd into public HTML, and then you see I have sub API here. So I'm going to make another directory and call it sub API underscore py. All right, so now we know what our document root's going to be here. And up here we've got the configuration file, which we will have to modify in a little bit. But that should pretty much get us on the right path to getting this working. All right, so what is next? Let's look at some of the miscellaneous things that we have to do. Let's start with this serialization. And if you go to the home page of this here, you'll see that it starts with some of the requirements. One thing it doesn't really talk about is some of the hidden requirements, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But right now it's saying we need Python 3.5 through 3.9, one of those, and Django 2.2, you know, it's all there. So that's what we need, and it talks about highly recommended or packages that are optional as well. So what we're going to do is go back to the quick start. Actually, no, that's not the one we want. The tutorial, serialization, and we're just going to run through this. So you can see Python 3 is the first thing they're calling, but in my system, if I do Python tac version, it's saying I have 275. So again, I started with an empty server, so it came with all of the defaults. So let's go to user bin and then just take a look. Let's do ls-al python star, and you can see here I've got just Python 2, which is 2.7.5. If I go to user local bin and I do the same thing, just ls, you can see it's empty because I have not installed anything. And then if I go to user lib64, if I do a Python search here, you can see the only references here are Python 2.7. So we need to get the next version, and I think I'm going to use like 3.6 or something like that. 3.6.8 I think is what I used last time. And so we're going to install that. But first we need to get some miscellaneous things done, which brings us to our next topic here, which is just miscellaneous. And I'm actually going to do this very quickly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install wget. So yum install, and this just allows me to download things from the internet. Wget. And then after that, I'm going to do a group install of development tools. And then as we go through this, you'll see that there are actually other things that I'm going to need along the way. and I will install them when I need them because it'll prompt me probably, and at that point I'll just install them. So, but I know that up front we're going to need this. Development Tools is going to give me my C compiler so that I can actually compile the new Python code. We're going to install that from source, and there's a reason for that, which we'll get into. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install Python. So head over to python.org. If you just go to the home page, you'll see that it looks like this here. You're going to go to the downloads and then go to the source code section. Click that. And the version we're going to install is 3.6.8. So no real reason for that other than I've used this version a few times and I just don't want to change it now. But there are newer versions that you can use. So go underneath that header and you'll see it says gzip source tarball. You're going to right click there and copy the link address. So we're going to head back over to our command line. In the options folder, you can see that I'm going to download that file and put it into there using the wget command. So we'll do wget the link that we just copied, and if I do an ls, you can see that now it's there. Now let's go ahead and unzip that folder. I'm going to do a tar xvfz and then the name of it. And if I do an ls, you can see that I have the unzipped version here. Now let's do a couple of other preparatory things for this, and I'm not really going to explain why, just kind of follow along. We're going to do a yum install. We don't really need to do gcc, but we'll add that, anyways. We'll do openSSL devel. And this is really just going to prevent future issues as you go through this, just packages that you may end up needing. SQLite tag devel and httpd tag devel. All right, and then we'll make sure that we've got the CentOS release SEO. Good to go. And now we can cd into the Python directory that we just unzipped, and we can configure this. So if I do a /configure enable optimizations, it will compile it for us. And now we should be able to make it. You see it says creating makefile and then it's finished. So let's do a make alt install. Whew, man, that took a while. All right, so now let's check out and see what we've got. Let's go to user local bin again. And you can see I've got a few files here that I didn't have before. You'll notice Python 3.6, so if I say Python 3.6 tac version, you can see the exact version is Python 3.6.8, which is what we just installed. I'm going to create a link really quick to that and call it just Python 3 so that I can execute Python 3. So I'll say Python or ln tech s Python 3.6 and we'll call it Python 3. So now you can see I've got my nice little link here. So if I do a Python 3 tac version, I'll get the same thing. Great. So let's move on to the next step. So the next step is going to be to get this virtual environment set up in this tutorial. And again, I'm not going to really spend too much time explaining how the tutorial itself works because that's not the focus of this, but I will kind of go over some high-level ideas here. So in our public HTML folder, you can see that I've got two directories. We created a new one. We called it subapi_py. So we're going to cd into that. And you can see it's empty right now. There's nothing in there. So let me just start by creating this virtual environment. So we're going to copy this and paste it in. And if I do an ls, you can see my virtual environment has been created. Now I'm going to do a source env bin activate. And now you can see off to the left here, my virtual environment has been activated. And so anything that I install now with pip, it's going to put it inside of that virtual environment. So let's start by installing Django. We'll install the Django Rest framework. We'll install the code highlighting package, which we're not really going to need, but it's in the instructions, so let's do it. You also see this notification here. It's telling us to update pip, so let's do that. And now we're going to create a project. We'll call it tutorial. Now if I do an ls, you can see I've got a project here named tutorial. So if I cd into that, you'll see that I've got manage.py and then the tutorial directory. So now we can start calling manage.py commands, basically. And in our case, we're going to start an app and call it snippets. So before I do this, though, understand that we're going to run into some issues that we have to work through. And I'm going to do this on purpose because I want to kind of explain to you that as you go through this particular tutorial, it doesn't identify anything about SQLite version or anything like that. So once I run this, we're going to have to back up and redo something. And the reason why is because of how we compiled our Python version. So we'll do this quickly. I'll fast forward through most of it, but I want to make sure you understand that if you're running through this tutorial, you're going to have this issue unless you are watching this video or somehow have the proper compilation of Python, which I highly doubt. So the command here, it says SQLite 3.8.3 is required, but it found 3.7.17. So that's an issue. There's a couple ways that you can fix this. One of the ways is if you have a system-wide SQLite version that you don't mind updating, you go out, you get the newer version of SQLite, and you replace the file in the library. That way, when it looks at that file, it'll find the right version, but that'll impact your entire system. The second thing that you can do is you can recompile your Python and tell it where the library path is for the SQLite version that we're going to download. And that's what we're going to do here. And so let's do that now. We have to actually download the correct version of SQLite. And in order to do that, we need to go to SQLite.org. So here's the home page, here's the home page. Now if I go to the download link, you'll see there's a lot of versions here, and the version that I'm actually interested in is going to be a Linux version here. So precompiled binaries for Linux, or do I want to have the source code? Let's do the source code. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tar.gz and I'm going to copy the link just the way I did last time with the Python. And I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to do a wget. Actually, let's make sure we're in the right directory. Let's do cd/opt. And then I'm going to do a wget the SQLite version that I'm interested in. So now if I do an ls, you can see that I've got it here. And if I want to unzip it, I do the exact same thing I did last time. So I should be able to do the tar x vfz SQLite. And now I can cd into it. And same thing, I can configure this, I can install it. So what I'll do is I will do a /configure, and then I'll do a make. All right, that's done, and then we'll do a make install. So let's go to our user local bin. All right, you can see SQLite 3 is now installed in our user local bin directory, and we'll do a check on our lib directory, and you can see that SQLite 3 is also there. So that isn't enough to make this work. We need to recompile Python and tell Python where to look for SQLite 3. And there are quite a few resources out there that'll help you get through this. But basically what we're going to do is we have to recompile it. So I'm going to tell you the commands, and then we're going to fast forward through so you don't have to wait. So we're going to go back to the options folder, go back to the Python 3.6.8, and instead of running the configure enable enable optimizations, by itself, we are going to preface it with ld_run_path equals, and then point it to the location of the library that was just installed. So now we've got ld run path, user local lib, configure, enable optimizations, and we're going to do one more thing, which is enable shared. And this is going to allow, this is actually very important to make the next portion work, which will allow us to push this to the public domain. All right, so the next command is going to be ld run path, user local lib again, and then this time I'm going to say make alt install. Okay, so we just reinstalled Python again, and the next step is to try to make this work over here where we do the start app snippets. So let's try that and see what we've got going on here. Success, so no errors at all. Let me do an ls really quick, and you can see snippets is here. So, I mean, this single section is pretty important, I'm sure, to people who are trying to run through this tutorial. It could almost just be a section or a video of it by itself that just explains how to work through that. But now we can just kind of copy the rest of it, and I'm going to try to move a little bit faster here. So it says we need to add our new snippets app and the REST framework to installed apps. So let's go into the tutorials settings file. And then we're going to go ahead and find where it says installed apps down here. And we're going to put in this information here. We'll copy that, paste it in. Python does care about spacing. And then it says, okay, we're ready to roll. We're going to create a model to work with. So the model is our table, essentially, that's going to be saved in the database. And it says to create a simple snippet model in snippets models.py. So let's go up a directory and go over to snippets. And then we're going to go vi models.py, and it's telling me to put my models here. And let's open a line up beneath it and copy all of this over. All right. Next, it says, do we need to create an initial migration for a model, basically to create the table in the database. So let's copy that. And it says manage.py, but if I go ls, you see I'm not in that directory anymore, so we need to be able to go in that directory and call it. So there we go. Creating model snippet, done. And then migrate. Everything's okay there. We're going to create our serializer class next. So it says go into, it says create a file in the snippets directory named serializers.py. So let's go back to the snippets directory. And we're going to create a file, call it serializers.py. And we're going to put this code in it here. And we'll save that. Full explanation of what this does is in this explanation here in this paragraph. So I'm not going to worry about that right now. And then if I do python manage py shell, so let's go back up one, and I do python manage.py shell, it'll bring me down into the Python shell. You can see I'm using version 3.6.8 of my Python, and it's going to let me add some snippets into this database so that we can play around with it. So let's just copy this, and we will paste it in here. And then it says we've now got a few snippets to work with. Let's take a look at one of them. So let's do this here. We'll copy and we'll paste. Oops. There we go. Better. And from here, we'll just say serializers data. And now you can see this is the data printing hello world. So this is what we're eventually going to see in our browser after everything's done. So it says to finalize the process, we render the data into JSON. So let's do that. And then we can just view it really quick, and there it is. And then it shows us how to deserialize as well. So let's just do that, kind of just run through this. We'll stream, got it, data parser.parse. And then we restore the native data types into a fully populated object instance. If it is valid, then it'll show me true, which it did. Then we will print this out, showing my validated data, which is good. And then we will save it, which it's done. All right. So now let's do this, or we're going to add the mini equals true to it. And we will do a serializer.data. So again, if you're really trying to understand how this particular thing works, this isn't your video. This is really just to run through it so we can get a nice little Django application running so we can display it in our browser. But yeah, so let's go into the snippets serializers, and they're going to have us do something here. So if I type exit, that'll get me out of the shell. And if I do an ls, you can see where we're at. So let's do a cd into snippets, and we'll go into the serializers file. So this is what I just added just now, and they're telling us to replace that with this shortened version. So we're going to do that now. Ultimately, it's going to do the same thing for us according to this tutorial. We're just going to, you see it's snippet serializer. We're just going to go ahead and comment this one out for now. So let's do comment. Actually, let's just delete that. Delete that. And at the end here, we will do end comment. So this is all commented out. It's not going to execute. It's going to execute this now. So let's save that. All right. So now it says to open the shell again and basically print information. We're going to skip that because we already trust that it's going to work. And so now it shows how to write views. So it says edit the snippets views.py. So let's go vi views. And we're going to open a line under here. And we're going to put in all of this. All right, so this is the snippet list to list all. This is the snippet detail to get a specific key or a specific record. And so we will copy this. And we're also going to put that in the views. And then it says finally we need to wire them up by creating our snippets URLs file. So let's do an LSC. It's not currently there. So we'll do vi urls.py. And we're going to copy and paste this. And then in the tutorial URLs folder, we need to do the same thing. So we're going to cd up and cd tutorial, and then go into the urls.py file here. So the default one that comes is this path, and what we'll do is copy this here, and let's just do this. Let's paste it here, and then I'm going to comment out what's already here. I'm not going to delete it for now. And now it says testing our first attempt with web API. So we've put all the code in here that we need. So it says to start the development server, and this is typically where tutorials end. We're going to do Python manage py run server. So let's do that. And let's actually start the server up here. So let's do a cd into our home brunstar public sub API underscore key. Boy, if I could type sub API underscore file. And then we're going to cd into the tutorial. And then if you forget how to start this, remember, you can just go to the top and bin activate. So in our case, we're going to do source and bin activate. So you can see I'm in the environment now. And if you go to testing our first attempt, we're going to do this part here. We're going to run the server. If we have any errors, it'll let me know, which right now it's saying I don't have any errors, which is good. And yeah, that is all there. So the next thing we can do, it says in another terminal window, which is what we have here. We can install httpie. So we'll do pip install httpie, which is the same thing as curl, basically. So now I can do this. And you can see that this successfully ran. So the good news is that it ran first try. That's actually really good news. And the bad news is we're not done, I guess, unless it could be good to you. But we are planning on taking the next step, which is really the thrust of this video, which is to display this in the browser with a public IP address. So right now, it won't work. It'll only work on localhost. And we're going to use what's called mod_WSGI, mod WSGI. And that's going to be a configuration we're going to set inside of our conf files for this virtual host, and it will allow us to work. So stay tuned. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back. Okay, I'm back. Had to get a drink of water. Now, we got this to work. The next thing we have to do is start messing with our configuration files. So let's get over to the configurations area. So we'll do cd etc httpd, and let's start with our sites available directory. So you can see we've already made a copy earlier of our subapi.conf, and we copied it over to this py. So we're going to go into that and make it apply to the Python situation we're dealing with right now. So server name is going to stay the same, alias, error log, custom log, that's all good. What's changing is the document root. The way it is right now, if I was to serve this publicly and change this to the subapi_py, what would happen is all of my files that are underneath that directory would be displayed and you could actually traverse it. So that's not good. So we're going to comment that out or just delete it. We don't really need it at all. But let's fix these other paths first. So we'll do subapi and then we'll do _py. And just to be clear, let's make sure we know where we're at here. pwd for present working directory. And if I go up one more, I'm in public HTML again. So remember where my logs are going to go. Let's go up one more and go into our logs. So you see I only have one log directory, so I'm going to make a new one, and I'm going to tie that back to this. So we're going to do make dir subapi_py, and now you can see I've got my two. One is going to have logs for one subdomain, and the other is going to have logs for the other. So we will say, let's do a pwd again. So you can see where we're at, home, brunstart, logs, home, brunstart, logs, and then this add-on that we added, subapi_py, and then requests. So let's do the same thing here, _py. And now we need to change our ports. So we're using port 8081. So let's do that now. So 8081, same IP, different port. Logs are good. We don't need this anymore. We're going to need some different directives for this. So here is where we're going to, I'm going to copy this over because I've already got it worked out, and then we'll change it. All right, so here. So let's take a look at this. We'll still have to make some changes because it doesn't really match what we're doing, but it's close. So home, here's the user. The user is actually Brunstar. And then public HTML, and then not API.com, but what did we call it? Sub API py, public HTML, right here, sub API py. So this directory, and if, in fact, if I go in one more, that'll be 100% correct, is the one that we're interested in for here. So let's just do that. And then we'll say require all granted. And then beneath that, we're going to set up the WSGI location. And WSGI is really the driver for this. This is the entry point. This is what's going to make this work. So let's do that. Oop. So directory home user is not just user, it's Brunstar. Public HTML, sub API underscore py, and then tutorial, and then tutorial. So that's one more directory in, so let's take a look at that. And you'll see I have this wsgi.py file. That's what we've got here. And so that should be it there. And then we've got this daemon process that we're going to identify here. So let's see here. Let's make sure I don't mess this up. All right, so WSGI daemon process tutorial, and that is the name of this tutorial. The Python path we're going to say is home user, which is not user, it's actually Brunstar. Public HTML sub API underscore py tutorial. And then we're going to have a second directory we're going to add to the path, which is home user public HTML. Take away user, we're going to change that to the name of our actual user. Sub API py environment library Python 3.6 site packages. So let's make sure that this actually exists, this second one here, before we go any farther. So let's see, we are here. So we need to be in the environment. So let's do cd-env. And then we're going to cd into lib, and then cd into, let's see, okay, so Python 3.6 does exist. And then site packages. So that is correct. Good. So I just wanted to make sure that that actually exists. Sometimes it's been Python 3, depending on how I set it up. So that's good. The next thing we want to do is we want to create a process group. So we'll do that next. And then from there, we want to set up the script alias. So the script alias is going to be, you'll do slash space, and then you'll do home, and then instead of user, in our case it's Brunstar, and then public HTML, sub API underscore py, tutorial wsgi.py. So let's just, again, verify that this exists. So, oh man, let's just take that, and then we'll do ls, and then that path. And you can see wsgi.py is right there, so that is correct. And we got to be careful here because, I mean, there could be something wrong in this, and if there is, we'll come back to it. But that is all we should need for this particular file. Okay, fun. So the next thing we need to do is we need to get the mod WSGI set up. So while we have the virtual host ready to execute, it doesn't have anything to execute with because it's not going to know what WSGI is. So let's go back into our, actually let's just do a pip install mod WSGI, and let's see if this works for us. Successfully installed, so that's good. So let's do a cd home brunstar public HTML sub. So we're going to go in and make sure that this file actually exists. I'll show you where it installs it at. So starting here, let's go into env bin, and now if you look here, you see it says mod WSGI express. So that's what I just installed, and that's what I can use to make this work. Now there are a few different ways you can use this. You can actually inject this into your Python program so that you can package it up and ship it and execute it without using Apache itself, the HTTPD Apache installation that you already have. It'll be packaged using Apache control. Another way you can do it is the way we're doing it today, which is actually modifying our config files on our Apache server. I personally like it that way a little bit better. And those are kind of the two main ways that people do this. You can also run a server that just like another test server here. So you can do another localhost test with mod WSGI Express. So we're not going to do that now, but we are going to press forward with getting this to work with our Apache server. So I'm going to show you where you can find some knowledge on this. So if you go over to pypy.org, where the project is mod WSGI, down here where it says connecting into Apache installation, you're going to find some commands that will allow you to find how to fix your config files, basically. So what they're saying here is that if down here we need to put this directive and this directive inside of our Apache config file, but it may not match what it says on this site. And the way to find out what it should say is to run this command here. So we're going to run mod WSGI express install module, and what that'll do is it'll take the module, it'll install it into your Apache tree, and then spit out the directory that it placed it. That way you can update your config files as you see fit. So let's do that now. So I just copied that. I'm going to paste that over here. And you can see that it's showing me that it put it in user lib64 httpd modules. And let's go into our etc httpd directory really quick and just take a look and see what we've got. So you can see there's a conf.modules.d. So let's cd into that. And if you take a look, there are several different files here, configuration files, and let's just look at one as an example. Let's do a VI on npm. So you can see all this is doing, it's loading modules as needed. All right, so let's do the same thing here. We could either put these two lines into our conf file itself, or we could create a file here. So I'm actually going to create a file here. So we'll go VI, let's do 00, and then we'll do mod, let's do WSGI.conf. And let's do my mod, just so that I know my mod WSGI.conf, so that I know that it's something that I'm putting in there. So I'm going to take these two lines that it spit out here, the load module and the home, and I'm going to put that in here. So it's saying that it installed it here, and it's saying home is here, which that looks accurate. So let's save that. I'm actually going to cd up one, and I'm going to go to modules. you also notice that it was installed here, right? So this is another way that you can reference it. It put it in both places. It put it into the lib64 directory, and it also put it into your modules directory. So instead of saying, like, linking to that directory in lib64, we can link it right here the way the other ones do. So let's go back one, and let's go back into conf.modules.d, and let's just look at how one of the other ones is set up again. So notice if I go to vi00.npm, you can see that it's loading the modules by just saying modules / and the name of it, right? So let's do the same thing here. So vi 00 my mod, and we're going to end up taking this file here, and we are going to say load module, WSGI module, and then we're going to paste that here. And then let's comment this out for now. If it doesn't work, we'll switch it back and we'll figure it out. But that should make this work. So now you're actually loading the module from your modules just the way all the other ones are. So right. Okay. So that should be kind of the main thrust of getting this thing to work. Just to kind of walk through it, just to make sure. So let's cd into conf. So the request comes in, it hits port 8081, which is listening. Port 8081 is going to push it over to sites available, at which point I will have the subapi.py.conf file. It'll come in, it'll look at the 8081, it'll identify where our logs are going to go. It's going to say where the public HTML subapi.py tutorial is at. It's going to say what WSGI is at, which is good. We've got our WSGI daemon process set up, our process group, and so all of that looks good. And it won't actually do that unless it's enabled. So let's cd into sites enabled, and you can see we are actually missing that file. So let's go ahead and create that link really quick. So to do that, I'm going to do a ln tac sfn, and I'm going to do etc httpd sites sites available, and I'm going to do the sub API_py, and then I'm going to call it the same thing it already is. So sub API_py.conf. So let's ls that, make sure it works, and it does. All right, and let's check the status of our server, and then we'll do a system ctl restart httpd. So let's try port 8081 and see what we get. There you go. So what that means, even though it's saying disallowed host, blah, 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 that means that it's reading the code. You know, it's going in and it's reading the Python code. So let's work this out really quick, and then we'll go. So we didn't mess with the settings file at all. Usually when you publicize this, you don't want it to be in testing mode. There's some little things. So let's check these settings now, and we should be able to make this work pretty easily. So let's go into the settings of this. So let's see where we're at. Okay, so let's do vi settings, and scroll down some. You can see where it says allowed host. That's by default null. So in our case, we want to, it's actually telling us, it says you may need to add this here, which is the server's IP address. And so we'll put that in here. Let's start there, and we'll see how this goes. So let's do a systemctl restart httpd really quick. And let's do a #r just to make sure any environment issues are kind of cleaned up. And so let's try that now. And there it is. So as you can see, this worked pretty well, but it took a while. So if you want to have your own platform as a service, there's where the value is. It's actually in time. Now the good news is you can set this up pretty quickly, pretty easily, if you build scripts or if it's pretty repetitive. And also, after you build the first domain, building the subsequent subdomains is pretty easy. All you have to do is just add a folder to it. So again, I'm glad you guys took the time, if you made it this far, to watch the video. And just to kind of go over what we looked at or what we talked about, we set up our server, we did some firewall settings, we installed Apache, we set up our vhost, we actually did 2 vhosts, and we messed with SELinux a little bit. Now ultimately with SELinux, we didn't set all of the rules that would allow it to work for enforcing, but it kind of gave you a brief overview. SELinux could really be a course in and of itself. We did some miscellaneous installs, we got the code working, we tested this on localhost, and finally we pushed it to production. So I'm going to break this up into several different chapters so that you guys can watch it and keep along, or skip to what applies to what you're looking for, because this is a long video. And yeah, if you have any comments, questions, please put them in the thread below, and I'll do my best to answer them. And that's all I've got. So thank you, and have a good day.